Let's talk some Nebraska recruiting. And as the Huskers, they are coming off their first bowl win since 2015, and recruiting is heating up this offseason. So I got Sean Callahan here from Husker Online. We're going to break down Matt Rhule's recruiting strategy throughout the offseason. But before we get going, Nebraska fans, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button to the On3 Recruits channel. All right, let's bring in Sean Callahan, Husker Online. Sean, like I said, a better season for Nebraska on the field in 2024. So what's the tone this offseason that you're hearing from recruits? Is it resonating?
Yeah, for Nebraska, I mean, they just got back to school and class this week, so things are taking off. But they had an excellent transfer portal class. I mean, I think as deep of a year as they've had. They had as good of a high school recruiting year as they've had in a number of years. So the 35 players they've added to this roster from the portal and from high school, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of optimism. They've upgraded the receiver position. Dylan Raiola's back. They got a big-time tackle on Elijah Pritchett. They've added some big-time defensive pieces to this roster. And again, they have a schedule at least that allows them an opportunity to maybe start off the year at a high level, opening in Arrowhead Stadium on August 28th against Cincinnati.
You mentioned the portal and some of the moves that have been made. There's been a lot of moves, but are they done? Is there anything left to add in the spring transfer portals window?
Well, as far as getting somebody on campus to start classes, I mean, they could technically get somebody here for next week, but there's nothing on the horizon right now. I would say, in the later window, if you were to look at some questions on this roster, I would say another offensive lineman that would be a starting level O lineman is a need. But I would say that's a need for a lot of teams that look in the portal. Running back, can they get another running back that could complement Emmett Johnson? That's to me a question moving forward on this team. And then on the defensive line, they're in need of more bigger bodies. So if the right bigger body was available that could give them kind of another interior piece, they lose Ty Robinson, Nash Huntmacher, Jamari Butler's at LSU. That would be maybe another area. But 15 players, I mean, the most Nebraska's ever added in their history of the portal is 16, and that was back in Scott Frost's final year. 15 is a big number already, so I would think at most there's one or two more potential spots they could add on this team. Because remember, too, Josh, they have to cut down to 105 players. As of today, Nebraska has 132 players confirmed on their roster going into the spring. So there's a number of cut downs that are going to have to be made to get Nebraska down to 105 players.
All right, let's flip it back over to high school. When it comes to 2026, in-state recruiting, it's always important. Every cycle, it's important for Nebraska. So who so far has emerged within the state as targets for Nebraska?
Well, for 2026, there's really two that jump out. Isaac Jensen from Millard South, who I would tab the number one prospect in the state in terms of the recruiting intention. He's a tight end. Shocker. Nebraska has another tight end coming out of the state. Right. That's been their kind of MO. But then Jace Reynolds, a linebacker from Elkhorn North. Those are the two players they're recruiting right now, the two they've offered for 2026. Now, for 2027, there's two that jump out already. Torrey Pittman, who's a safety from Omaha Central. He has USC. He has Miami, a number of major league offers. Nebraska, obviously one of them. That's a guy to watch moving forward after he just finished his sophomore year. Then Matt Erickson, who's a 6'7.5", near 300-pound offensive tackle. His father, Mike Erickson, played for Nebraska. Okay. So I would think that's a really, almost a slam dunk type recruit for Nebraska if they play their cards right. Kylon Haynes from Omaha Central is another one. So really there's about 5 already that I've identified as key targets for 2026 and 2027.
All right, we'll keep tracking those. I want to talk a little bit more strategy here. Matt Rhule and his staff, they've been on the road during January. It's a contact period, a lot of visits being made, a lot of contacts happening. So when will we, though, expect top recruits to head to Lincoln? Is there going to be any big off-season weekends that Nebraska fans should know about?
Yeah, I think here at the end of January, they're planning on a few small gatherings, and these aren't going to be the traditional kind of cattle call junior days where 40 or 50 kids come with name tags and, who gets called in the office to get the offer. I think recruiting, as you know, Josh, has evolved a lot, even just in the last year, especially with the rev share and the roster cut downs. So these events, these players they're going to bring in, these will be more high priority prime targets for Nebraska. So that will be something to kind of keep tabs on who they bring in. We've already confirmed a couple of names at this point, but I would venture to guess we're talking, 4 or 5 names in a weekend, almost more of an official visit type setting for these prospects versus a large scale event. Just because in the new college football world we're living in, you just don't have that flexibility to have as many recruits and players as maybe you did before.
Yeah, and it's quality over quantity. Whereas back in the day, you're right. It's more transactional now. It's more you're coming to campus because we know we want you. You don't come to campus for the offer anymore. It's kind of changing in that regard. So Nebraska fans, talk to us. Sean and I just gave you a brief rundown of recruiting this offseason, but how are you guys feeling about recruiting? What's the vibe this offseason? What are your expectations for Matt Rhule and the staff when it comes to recruiting? Let us know. Comment section below.